The Altar of Heaven complex in Beijing embodies the connection that exists between the ancestors and Shangdi. But to understand why the ancient Chinese would invest so much into the Altar of Heaven complex and why their whole economy was built around the worship of Shangdi in the border sacrifices, we need to go back to understand the ancestors themselves. From the very beginning, China has been known by its people as Shangzhōu, a name which translated literally into English means the land of God or God's land. Almost 2,000 years before the birth of Confucius or Buddha and 2,500 years before the birth of Jesus Christ, the Chinese ancestors understood their land as belonging to God. Today, 4,000 years later, the record of God and His land is still embodied in the very name of China. Who was this God of the Chinese ancestors, whose claim to the land of China has withstood the test of time? A civilization's cultural heritage is passed down through time in the oral and written records. This fact makes language one of the greatest artistic creations of any civilized nation. More people today speak Chinese dialects than any other language on earth. Chinese is the only script that has been in continuous use since its inception, some 4,000 years ago. A distinguishing fact of the Chinese language is that it is pictographic rather than phonetic. Pictograms were used to depict material objects, and they form the basis of China's written language. As pictograms evolved over time, they became more abstract, making them simpler to replicate, yet still retain the original meaning. Pictograms are good at representing objects, but they are limited in expressing abstract concepts and ideas. And so, the ancestors developed an ingenious approach which would become known as the ideogram. Ideograms are compounds composed of two or more pictograms. And so, the language was able to be encoded, making way for records to be made which would last for the next 4 millennia. Evidence of ancient Chinese writings were first discovered in Beijing in 1899. A scholar noticed that bones being sold for medicinal use in a Beijing pharmacy had inscriptions carved on them. These came to be known as the Oracle Bone Script. Many of these carvings have been found to have come from the Shang dynasty, which dates from 1765 BC all the way down to 1122 BC. In comparison with Jewish history, this would imply that by the time of Joseph's death in Egypt and all the way throughout the lifetime of Moses, China had already a highly developed, complex, and sophisticated system of writing. The next stage of development in writing was the bronze inscriptions. These were texts carved onto the surface of the bronze vessels. Used mainly for ceremonial purposes, these inscriptions came into use during the Western Zhou dynasty, which dated between 1121 BC and 771 BC, which was about the time of the dividing of the Kingdom of Israel in the Hebrew Old Testament. By examining these characters throughout the various periods and scripts, we find that within the written record there are encoded stories and primitive pictures of life at the time when these characters were formed. With the use of their developed language, the ancestors became prolific writers and extremely accurate record keepers. Today, the world has a historical treasure known as the Chinese classics, parts of which date back almost 3,900 years. These classical texts refer to the 9 books, which are made up of 4 books of Confucius and 5 books of Jing. These classics were written by many authors over many years, and yet most of the authors credit heaven or God as the source of the inspiration for their writings. For traditional Chinese, these books have held the same place as the Bible does for the Christian. China's ancestors were record keepers, with highly detailed ancient compilations and with encoded stories within their characters. The ancestors have left us with a remarkable insight into the way they saw the world, saw each other, and how they saw Shangdi, their god, whose land they lived on. Join me next time as we continue our quest to explore this ancient relationship the ancestors had with Shangdi according to their own words.